Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abassi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. We're going to keep going. I want to remind you that this month's book is A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. And I've kind of stalled on it because I've been, I don't know, doing other stuff. I've been making a quilt and I don't want to screw it up. So I stopped listening to the book for a little bit. But I finished the quilt tonight. So I'm back to the book. I'm back to lots of things that the quilt was keeping me from. But the quilt is beautiful. And I will show it off. I'm going to show it off on my social media. I'm giving it to somebody tomorrow for Mother's Day, and then I'll post some pictures on social media. So if you don't follow me yet, find me on Facebook, and that's where I'll be posting it. Sometimes I post things on Instagram that are personal, but mostly I'm just posting episodes on Instagram. Anyway, too much about social media. Okay. And then don't forget the Creative Expressions Listener Challenge for this month. So I have two creative expressions that I've done this month, the quilt and the summer romper, and both are available to see on social media. Well, the quilt will be tomorrow after I give it as a gift. So what is creative expressions? This month, you are encouraged to engage in a creative activity such as writing, painting, music, crafting, silting. Well, silting, if you know what that is, you can do that too. Knitting, woodworking, whatever you want to do, whatever you like. So it's aimed at demonstrating the transformative power of change and renewal through creative work. And I welcome any pictures that you have before and after of your project, and I hope to see them. And if I may, if I can, if you will let me, I will post these pictures on the new podcast website page called Recovery Upcycling, which is already live, and you can find it at recoverydailypodcast.com/upcycling. And this section celebrates the process of turning old forgotten items into beautiful, useful objects. And it really, for me, has been a great example of how my life has transformed over the course of my recovery in sobriety and now in stroke recovery as well. So today I want to talk about how the actions that we take in recovery may start out as intentional efforts. They feel like work, but gradually they become who we are. And I'll explore the concept of keeping our feet firmly planted on the earth. This is something that we say in our recovery sobriety program, and how to allow our actions to become who we are instead of just what we do. I'll discuss my recent experiences with vestibular therapy, which has challenged my commitment this week to this new way of life, just in simply practicing self-restraint to save myself from future symptoms. I did not record an episode yesterday because of the symptomatic activities that I've been doing in vestibular therapy, and it's really been causing me to have a pretty rough couple days. So I do feel a bit better than I did this morning even. I have I went to bed early last night. I took a 3-hour nap today. I finished my quilt, which is a big boost, but I'm just going to keep resting. So this this whole idea of self-restraint and what can I do now to save what I may feel like tomorrow, that has been clearly shown to me in these vestibular therapy sessions that I've had this week. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So in recovery, there's a saying about keeping your feet planted on the earth. And then if I focus on keeping my head where my feet are, I am staying present, focused, and engaged with my recovery where I'm at each day. In recovery, every day is different. Every day has been different for me. Every single day is different for me. Although it's generally progressive healing, it is slow and can involve regressing sometimes. Sometimes it's, one step forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In sobriety, we call it, when we regress, we call it relapsing, if we physically pick up a drink. But what if we are emotionally relapsing? And in recovery, we can regress. In stroke recovery, we can physically, take these steps forward and then step back. So, what is that? Like I've been thinking about this today and wondering, like, how I'm always drawing parallels between stroke recovery and sobriety. And I'm thinking, if we're calling that a relapse, what is the stroke recovery when I'm taking a step forward and then I'm taking steps back? Like, that's what I have felt like this week. I got to the point right before Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember which day was my first therapy appointment, but I was starting to feel like I'm starting to feel better, like I'm starting to feel like I can go out on a walk and challenge myself to do some things that before I would have, made myself sick. Now, sometimes if I do that, I regret it. I think there was a couple weeks ago that I went outside. I think I told you guys, I went outside for a walk and I'm like, I'm going to do one of my indoor exercises, vestibular exercises outside and do the scan the room thing. Only I'm outside, so I'm going to scan around me outside. Well, that was a mistake. And I ended up not being able to walk home. I had to stand on the sidewalk for 10 minutes. But it's times like that that I feel like I can do that stuff, that I feel like I've made progress. And then this week, doing some of these activities with the vestibular therapist, I have felt more like I haven't made any progress at all. This is I mentioned it, I think, at the beginning of this week. This is where that she puts out all the cards with a letter on each card and she put them out on a table and I just started crying. Well, we did that again on Friday, but which was yesterday. Yeah. But sorry, I was trying to remember if it really was Friday. Yeah, it was. I didn't cry, because I had talked to my psychiatrist about looking at these activities as meditative exercises. And I talked to you guys about that. So I went in there and I did that and I remained calm and I breathed through it. And I got like halfway through the alphabet. I sat down because I started not feeling well. So then I had to recover for 5 minutes or so. Then I stood up, I finished the alphabet again. And then I sat down, and then we had to do the poster board, which I told you guys about, where the poster board has the alphabet on it, but the alphabet isn't straight. They're like crooked and they're not in line and they're all over the place. And there was no really, I don't know what the word that I'm trying to find is, but there wasn't a clear way to me how to scan the poster board for each letter. So I really had to restrain myself and go like this in line to find the letters. And I got again halfway through, and then by that point I was wrecked. So I had to sit down, and that was the end of the therapy session. I just couldn't do anymore. So anyway, that got me slightly discouraged, or yeah, I guess I would call it discouraged, where I felt like, I guess this is just how it's going to be kind of thoughts. Well, I also started thinking a bit about like my weight and my back hurting and my neck hurting, and how I feel like I'm still like not totally cognitively there like I used to be. So I got up this morning. I woke up at like 6 because I had gone to bed early, which is a good thing. If I can wake up on my own at 6, then that means I got enough sleep. And so the first thing in my mind was, I wonder if it's normal for somebody to physically deteriorate after a stroke. This is where my brain was. So I Googled it. I know, don't do that. Don't Google these types of things. I just feel like I've been constantly fighting for my health. If it's not my headaches, it's my weight. If it's not my weight, it's my back, it's my neck. If it's not those things, then it's my emotional or mental well-being. I just feel like I'm constantly like clawing myself out of this um funnel that I'm falling down into. And this morning, you're going to be like, Rachel, why did you do this? I even Googled what is the life expectancy post stroke. So, yeah, don't do that. When I was first, when I had my stroke and I was in ICU, my kids got to come visit me in there because they hadn't seen me yet. So they let them come in, and which is unusual just because it was COVID at the time. So they weren't really letting people in, but they let the kids in. And so this guy, one of the nurses came into my room in ICU, and I was talking with the kids, and I said to the nurse guy, I'm afraid I'm going to have another stroke. Like, we're talking about how the fear of having another stroke. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. If you were to have another one, it won't be for another 10 years. So I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm 46 years old. You're telling me, like, is that supposed to come across as good news? Because it's not good news. I was not expecting to have another one. I wanted him to say, oh, you're not going to have another one. I know he can't say that, but it was just odd that he pulled out the number 10, like, oh, don't worry, it won't be for another 10 years. And I'm just like, okay, so that I think has been stuck in my craw since I was in ICU. So that was 3 years ago now. And I have been working with, I haven't really talked much to my psychiatrist about, I guess I have a little bit, but it's, I think it's one thing that feeds this depression that I feel. Um, but I think there's more to it than that. When I'm searching these things like this on the internet, like I did this morning, what I need to do is back up and look from the outside in and be like, what is this saying about you that you're searching these things about body deterioration and life expectancy? It means that my feet aren't planted on the earth, aren't firmly planted on the earth, and that I'm not in the present moment. I'm future tripping. And it's hard to restrain myself from doing this. Over time, the things that I do in recovery, the decisions that I make, my daily practices start to shift from actions to integral parts of who I am, of my identity. Now, that is not just in recovery, but every day of our lives. Like the decisions that we make and these things that we do, the more we do them, they get ingrained, they become habits, they become who we are. And if I focus on the next right thing, rather than doing something like searching for body deterioration or life expectancy, if I do the next right thing instead, I'm present and I'm helping my future self instead of taking away from my future self. If I future trip about what's going to become of me, I'm stealing away from that future self. I could be spending time doing something for myself, helping my body not deteriorate, rather than just being like, what's going to happen to me, right? So it all comes back to consistency. That's what I see. I think I just get freaking tired. I get tired of being consistent. I mean, who doesn't? So think about the goals that we set in life and in recovery. When I first joined my last company that I worked for, I immediately wanted to be a manager. Like I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to be more. Um, then I became a manager. So what do I want next? I want to be a director, you know? And then once I became a director, I want to be a vice president. I was never happy with where I was. I mean, that's not true. I was happy. I loved doing what I was doing and being what I was being, but I always wanted the next thing. And similarly, when I got sober, I remember sitting in a meeting and there was a woman, I don't even remember her name now, but she was celebrating 3 years of sobriety. And I thought that was amazing. That was amazing that somebody was celebrating 3 years of sobriety. Like, man, if I can do that, you know? Well, then when I reached 3 years of sobriety, which didn't happen as fast as me telling the story just did, then I wanted 8 years of sobriety. I was anticipating 12 years of sobriety. I was not thinking about today's sobriety. And what fuels that? Um, is it drive, like an amazing drive that I have, personal ambition? I guess there's a little bit of that. Is it ego? Probably a lot of that. I feel like it's partially what I want to view myself as and what I want others to view me as. Um, and then perhaps there's a little bit of unrealistic self expectations in there as well. And it's it's important for me to recognize when that future tripping like that shapes my identity and it steals away from today, from who I am today. Um, I think that it serves me well in a lot of ways to have that kind of ambition. I've always had it. Um, but I feel like I'm never going to be rewarded. Internally, I'm never going to be rewarded if I'm always waiting for the next thing to happen. Um, it's like I remember when I became a director at work, I was super proud of myself. I was excited, to be a director. Whoosh. But I think by the next day, I was thinking, okay, I wonder how long it'll be before I can make senior director. And I never did make senior director, daggone it. I was gone before it could happen. Anyway, just this week, I had this fascinating experience with my vestibular therapist, which really highlighted how recovery practices can evolve into personal transformation. And I should say, it was not fascinating. The experience was not fascinating while I was there, but retrospectively, it's thought provoking. Um, these visual exercises that I'm doing, using the alphabet as a tool to enhance my visual scanning skills. I was, when I was left so emotionally overwhelmed looking at the letters of the alphabet, I was future tripping. When I was standing there looking at the alphabet, I was not thinking of finding A. I was thinking of finding every letter of the alphabet all at the same time. That's I feel like what my brain was thinking was you're going to have to find A, then you're going to have to find B, then you're going to have to find C, then you're going to have to find D. And I was going through the entire alphabet and I hadn't even looked for A yet. Um, so after talking about this struggle with the psychiatrist, I I talked to you guys about reframing my vision exercises into meditative practices to pace myself and focus on breathing and pause when my symptoms become intensified. And so I did. Halfway through, I got the onset of what we've been calling grizzly head here. And that's the dizzy feeling like I've been punched in the head or somebody shook my head or I was riding the grizzly roller coaster at King's Dominion. Um, and what struck me while I was doing this practice this way, when I was doing this slow, methodical way of looking, while I'm looking at the letter A, don't think about B, just think about A. Well, this was such an amazing example of self-restraint that I had to employ. It's like being incredibly hungry and only allowing yourself a single bite of a Snickers bar. That is a real test of discipline, but that is how difficult it is for me. And when I was doing it was kind of after the fact that I was thinking about this. If any of you watch Big Bang Theory, those of you who know me know that I'm a huge Big Bang Theory fan. And if you've seen it, there's a episode where Amy challenges Sheldon to complete only parts of tasks and denies him the satisfaction of completion. For example, they put tic-tac-toe, not tic-tac-toe. Yeah, is that tic-tac-toe? Mm-mm-mm. I think I don't, for some reason, I can't think right. Anyway, the X's and O's thing, she writes it on the whiteboard and then she only allows him to get right to the point before he wins. And then she erases the game before he has a chance to win. Or he sets up all these dominoes on the floor and he sets up this big, intricate design of dominoes, and then right before he's done and puts the last domino down, she knocks them all over. And then another one is he's singing the Star Spangled Banner, and right before he's about to sing the last note that like goes up really high, she like turns off the music or something like that. So it's like this inability to, it's restraint, it's self-restraint. And it was super challenging for me not to jump ahead, to take one letter at a time. It's like having a big, gigantic bucket of popcorn and only eating one kernel of popcorn at a time. That's how difficult it is. And I'm so adamant about explaining this to you because it's not normal. It's not something that I've ever had to do, this type of self-restraint. Because if pre-stroke, if I had all the letters of the alphabet in front of me, I would have knocked that thing out like it was no one's business. I would have tried to be the fastest and the best person at picking out all the letters in order. Not only would I do that, but I would create the pile next to me and the pile would be 100% straight. In the, and now it's like, you can only pick up one letter at a time or your head is going to hurt. So be careful. And I don't know. I'm learning how to do that. I'm learning how to, just because I can scan and pick out all the cards as fast as possible and put them down, doesn't mean that I should, because then I'm going to suffer from dizziness for 2 days after that. So it's these types of therapy sessions when we get to something more complex like this, which is not just moving my eyes, but it's integrating my cognitive abilities. And so it's multitasking. And these types of more complex activities scream to me that I am disabled. That's what it does. If I do it the way she would recommend, then it looks like I'm disabled. I feel disabled. If I do it the way that makes me cry and I want to finish it as fast as possible so the whole experience will be over, then I don't look disabled, but I'm in a lot of pain afterwards. This therapy session was an illustration of my broader recovery journey. I I don't just have to I don't have I don't have to just endure discomfort. I am learning how to change my response to it by reframing challenging situations as opportunities for something more inspiring. I can turn them into parts of my mental healing process. And this helps in managing physical symptoms, and it deeply integrates my physical recovery into my very being, removing it from what I do, just what I do, to who I am. I'm challenged in this post-stroke recovery to slow down, to work methodically, to plan ahead, but not forward trip, to plan ahead, but not assume what's ahead, to be patient, to be self-reflective, to respond to my own self-talk, to care for myself as I would a child. These are all new ways of being for me. I'm foundationally changing who I am and how I live to accommodate my disability. I did this when I got sober. I changed to accommodate my disease. I have found a way to be a better version of me despite of, not despite of, but because of my invisible illness. So reflect on how your actions within your recovery are shaping your identity. Are they just tasks, or are they stepping stones to a new version of a person, the person who you are becoming? Recovery is building a life where our progress and success are merely aspects of a new, richer, fuller identity. So thank you very much for joining me on the Recovery Daily podcast today. And if today's discussion, today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone else who might find it helpful. So thank you, and I will talk to you tomorrow.